9 to 10:30, we had a presentation from the IT people at the state regarding the tool. And I asked some very specific questions regarding the tool. In essence, any member of the public, from what I was told, will be able to log in at milogin.com. I was told that the tool will be available. When you log in, it'll require you to create a username and password. Only members of the commission would have the ability to edit, from what I was told, but we would be able to see each other's plans, and they're not necessarily locked, but you could have multiple plans that would be on the site. I was also told that the tool will be available September the 1st, which would be next Wednesday. And the interesting thing about the tool, at least from the demonstration, it seemed to be fairly intuitive as far as putting together different maps and plans. But one of the interesting things, and I wish to address it with Sandon when he makes a presentation to us regarding the GIS capabilities that the county has, is that the data from the census department is in census blocks. And census blocks don't necessarily match up with precincts. So you have to be careful when you're drawing a map, if you want to comply with the statutory requirements that we're bound by, to make sure that when you have a census block, that it's not in more than one precinct, because we're not supposed to be in the business of dividing up precincts. I don't know whether we have any information on precincts where census blocks divide up the precinct or not. That's another question that I'll have for Sandon when he makes his presentation. But the information that I wish to convey for this commission is I was told that the tool will be available September the 1st, and that it will be loaded with all of the census data, the final data that was received by the or published by the Census Department on August the 12th. So, and I'm not sure how the state, the question I didn't ask is how the state could stand by a September 30th publication date when they're in essence releasing to every apportionment commission in the state of Michigan the data in a mapping tool on September the 1st. But we have our opinion as of August the 12th. Is there any further discussion regarding the presentation that Mr. Stoker has made?
My only comment is I have a question on the BOE tool. Would you like that now or would you like it at Sandon's?
You can go ahead and
Okay.
make it now. And I think that would allow us to
The
ask
Bureau,
some better informed questions of Sandon.
okay, the Bureau of Elections also presented the CCD tool to the county clerks at our conference. And at that time, it was pretty well discussed that the public would not have access to the Bureau of Election tool, that it would be limited to the intent of that tool from the Bureau of Elections is to limit it to the members of the Apportionment Commission in each county. If the party chairs would like to have that access, they do have to set up a Michigan Gov account. Joe Bridgman has been designated as the administrator for Livingston County, and he will be setting up those accounts once that account with the state has been set up, but it is not for use by the public. What I have been working on with Sandon and GIS is creating a terminal that the public would have access to in IT under the Esri product, where they could go in and work on drawing their maps. So I do not believe the public has access to the Bureau of Elections tool.
Ms. Stobmeyer?
I listened to the training that was recorded on YouTube, and it basically said the same thing, that the county appoints administrator decides who can have access. And it was clear that I wasn't even clear from their presentation that the party chairs would have access. So I'm relieved to hear Clerk Hundley's statement that we could have access. So, I think the general public kind of is being, well, they'll have access to a terminal in IT department, which will alleviate it in some respects. But working with census blocks might be difficult, although it was my understanding that there are voter tabulation districts in the tool that are similar to precincts. And I'd like to know how similar, and maybe Sandon can help us with that.
Anything else for me?
Anything else for Mr. Stoker? Thank you. I did ask to have Sandon put on the agenda for discussion of the mapping tools that are available. Are you there, Sandon?
Yeah, I'm here. So I'm gonna just start off with, I'll share my screen and show the Esri tool that I put together using the census blocks as well as our precinct data. So let's see. It looks like I'm disabled from screen sharing at the moment, so. All right. Okay, so here is the Esri tool that I set up on Clerk Hundley's machine and Reader's machine. And this shows, everything is all set up in blocks, and there's populations that are attached to each block. So in order to start drawing out your districts, you'd first have to go and start editing. Then you select, which district, and you just go through and you can highlight various precincts, and it will automatically start figuring out how many people are in that district and the deviation off of the ideal optimal number, which I think is somewhere around 21,500, based on how I'm trying to remember it. So once you highlight the precincts, you just right click, hit assign, and it creates that district. Then from there, you'd go and pick second district, and then just same thing, highlight, assign, and it automatically calculates the population for each said district. So here it has District 2, which is about 10,000 below. So say if I wanted to add some more And then that actually brings it up a little bit high there. So if you want to carve out more districts out, just reassign. And it automatically figures everything, automatically figures out the population numbers. Any questions so far on this? Or it's a pretty straightforward tool to use once all the data is set up and put in. Once you're done with the plan, you can just save your edits, stop editing, and you can actually create a shapefile from it, so you can export it out and just store it in a specific location. You can add it to your map, and that data will have, let's see. Let's create a second one. Okay. It'll have the tabulation data as far as the populations and the deviation and such included. And I know that there was some mention about the voting districts that's provided with the census data as well. Unfortunately, that data set doesn't really align with our voter precincts too well in certain local units. Specifically, Tyrone Township, Brighton Township, Green Oak Township, and Hamburg Township. There were some significant deviations from those voter districts to the voter precincts that I was able to process. Also, there's a spot within the city of Brighton where there's a census block that's split right in half by a precinct boundary that had caused a little bit of a headache in the general processing and getting some of those numbers put together. So
Is that entirely within the city of Brighton, though?
yes,
Oh.
I can actually
I
show
mean,
you.
we're required in any event to make a city whole, so it really wouldn't come into play.
So basically, it's like right in this general area where the
Mr. Chair.
Sound like?
Sandon, can you explain, I think it's important at this point, if you could explain to people how you extrapolated the data from the US Census Bureau from the legacy format to come up with the numbers that you have per precinct in Livingston County. If you could provide an explanation of that and what those numbers are, if you could, please.
okay. Let me see. Take me a moment here I had prepared a document. You see the document? Let's see. Yes. All right, so I prepared a document to basically go into some detail as to why the districts don't quite line up and such. Below here is an example of one of the areas that had some discrepancy, the teal line being the county precinct data and the sort of purplish pink line being the voter data or the voting districts data from the Census Bureau. Essentially what I did to come up with our census numbers is I downloaded the data from the Census Bureau in their legacy format, which is essentially 4 text files that you have to input into a Microsoft Access shell and then create an export from that in a Excel spreadsheet. I did two different exports, one being census blocks, another one being the voter district export. Then there's also a shapefile that needs to be downloaded, or shapefile set, which contains the geography for the census blocks and for the voting districts, as well as other like counties and cities and states and such. So I brought in the census block shapefile and I joined it with the census block table. So I was able to get population numbers for each census block, which is shown in this second figure in here. Then I converted the census blocks into point features so that a point would be associated with a specific precinct for those areas where precincts were being split by census blocks. So figure 3 shows the precincts with their boundaries, and then on the right, there's the point version. Once I processed those using a tool called a spatial join, I was able to calculate the sum of all of the census blocks within a particular precinct to come up with the precinct population numbers. So the teal numbers in here are the total population for each precinct. Now comparing them with the voting district numbers, I did find some differences. This can be seen in this particular graphic here, where there's one that's 1341, but 1345 is what they have and such. So trying to get to the bottom of where and how the census got their numbers is where the voting district layers in tables came in handy. So what I did is I used the same process that I utilized to create the population numbers for our precincts. I used that same exact process to run it against the census voting districts geography. When I ran those two processes, or ran that process and then compared it to the numbers that the census had associated with each district, I came up with identical numbers across the board. Here's an example of that particular table that shows the comparison. I also ran another process where the census districts and the voter precincts were overlaid on top of each other, and I figured out areas that were overlapping where there were two different districts. There were a few hundred occurrences of this, but I ran that again, that data set against the census points to figure out the population that is affected by this. Here's an example of one of those areas out in Brighton Township where the line is different. In total, there were about 20 areas across the county where a census block was given the incorrect precinct based on the census voting districts. In all, that comes out to a population of 786 that would be put into the wrong precinct if the voting districts provided by the census were used instead of the county precincts that we have. So based on that, I would recommend using the processed county precincts, as I think it would be a more accurate way to view our population count via precinct. Were there any questions?
Ms. Dobmeyer?
Well, so are you saying we shouldn't use the Secretary of State tool at all and just use the ERIS tool, since it uses the voter tabulation districts and not the precincts?
That would be my recommendation. Now, most of the most of these issues where you're having problems with precincts do occur within a local unit. So like within the city of, or within the Brighton Township, or within Tyrone Township, Green Oak, Hamburg, if those were kept whole during drawing, the drawing, it may not be that big of a deal as far as number of population affected, because on the edges, it wasn't as much of a problem as it was within. There were some precincts where maybe there was a discrepancy of 6 to 12, but then there was one in Hamburg where there was 94 people who were assigned in the wrong precinct using that voter district data.
So if there were one terminal for several people to use, including the general public, what would we do? Schedule a time to come in, or how would that logistically work?
It probably would be best to schedule a time, because I'm going to assume that there would be questions by the general public user or even the commission user on how this software works. It's easy once you get the hang of it, but to somebody who's new at GIS, there will be a little bit of a learning curve, but I don't anticipate it being that much more difficult to use than, say, like the state's tool, which is in a web-based environment.
Okay, this question might not be appropriate for you, but for the rest of the commission, but there's talk about us drawing our own map. Were you envisioning that you would be in the room with us at a certain time and we would say, okay, Sandon, we want Brighton Township in District 1, and we want Green Oak in District 2, and you would sort of manipulate this tool and create the map? Or are you envisioning that we would all just show up with 7 copies of a map and a description, and that we would vote on these up or down one by one? How are you envisioning that this would work?
I'm thinking that would probably be more of a question for the commission itself on that.
Okay, thank you.
Are there other questions for Sandon, Ms. Reckling?
Yes, I just want to clarify that the handouts that we were provided, there's an Excel sheet, or it looks like an Excel sheet with total population on it, and then there's also a map. Are these numbers accurate compared to what Sandon has in the program for the precincts? I'm not sure who did these, so I just want to make sure they match.
Sandon did, you can ask him.
Sandon is, I'm assuming all of those numbers align.
Those numbers are the same ones that would be in our Esri tool.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Are there other questions for Sandon? Is it possible, Sandon, that you would be able to take the spreadsheet for the township with the population data and precincts and email that to the clerk for distribution to commission members?
Yes.
And I'm assuming that we would also be able to take that spreadsheet and put it on our apportionment commission website as well.
Yeah, I can arrange to have that done.
Together with, and what I would propose, unless there's some other discussion by other commission members, if we could take both the spreadsheet and the map that we've been provided, together with the processing precinct level population data using the 2020 census blocks, and post all of that as attachments on our apportionment commission website.
Would you like a motion to that effect?
I would entertain it, yes.
I would make a motion that we accept the numbers as provided by Livingston County GIS per precinct to be the numbers that we will draft our apportionment plan for, and to post the information in the map and the Excel spreadsheet format, along with the explanation provided by Sandon on the Apportionment Commission website.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Discussion. Discussion. Roll call.
Commissioner Hunley,
Yes.
Commissioner Reader,
Yes.
Commissioner Nash,
Yes.
Commissioner Reckling,
Yes.
Commissioner Daubenmeier.
Yes. Yes.
Motion carried.
The other question that I would have for Sandon and also for IT, it is concerning to me that we would only have one terminal that would be available to the public and to the other commission members. I know Ms. Hunley has had the data loaded on her computer. I had Sandon come out and load the GIS tool on my computer at the office. I'm not sure whether Ms. Nash will or not. It looks easy when Sandon does it. I can tell you when I try to start using it, and I consider myself to be a pretty tech savvy person. I encountered quite a few problems. We'll put it that way. And it's embarrassing to admit that, but it's the truth. Sandon, do you know if it's possible to set up some additional computers for access by commission members and the public to be able to work ArcGIS tool?
That's something I would have to probably discuss with the IT applications manager and the infrastructure manager to verify.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Ms. Nash.
I would just like to offer, I have a public terminal in my office that if it were able to be loaded, the public would certainly be welcome to use that terminal. Of course, we would need GIS staff to assist them, but just as an option, I'd like to throw that out there.
Okay. Ms. Greger?
I
From
would
up-
suggest that if we are going to have more than one terminal available, that we keep it in the GIS area so that if Sandon's expertise is needed, that it can be provided. Otherwise, it would be difficult to answer questions. Sandon, there was another low tech option that you were looking into. Are you still looking into that?
I didn't quite hear what she said.
Yeah, well done. Hit it. Sandon, you were looking into another very low-tech option for the public to use potentially. Are you still looking into that?
Yeah,
We were basically looking at somewhat of a coloring book approach, where you would have a map and then you would have your numbers and you could kind of color in what your districts would be. So
and the map that I provided would work pretty well for that purpose.
okay.
Ms. Stobmeyer?
I think Ms. Reckling has a question too, but I just was wondering, Sandon, how we get these maps out of the system. We're supposed to provide 7 copies of each map. How do we export them somehow?
The,
Is
the,
that-
the maps that were provided, they are in a PDF format, so they can easily be printed on an 8.5 by 11 sheet.
Thank you.
I think the question was if we were using ArcGIS, do we have the ability to print at the public terminal or the terminal to be used by commission members a copy of the maps that are drawn? And Ms. Greger is approaching.
I would, t- within reason. So if you come up with 20 plans, we wouldn't want you to use the paper and the ink for the 20 plans. We can export the PDF and we can send it to folks that maybe they can print the one set of 7. And then the PDFs for the additional ones, we could, make sure that it goes to, well, email it to themselves, and then they could have it printed elsewhere. I just don't want it to go too crazy because we're paying for all the paper and ink, but
Is the computer set up at this time?
we have allocated a computer, the software's not loaded yet.
Do we know when that'll be done?
We could have it done early next week. Sandon, are you in agreement with that?
Yeah, it wouldn't take too long to load the software and get the application loaded on, maybe like half an hour to an hour, depending on, processor and, just general machine specs.
And when will we know if we can hook up 2 or 3 of these?
Probably early next week. We will check into what's available in our inventory today, and we'll know by Monday what's available and whether or not it's viable.
Ms. Reckling?
Sandon, there is an online tool called davesredistricting.org that has a county apportionment option. And just from a cursory glance, looking at the numbers that we voted to approve that you provided and the precinct numbers in Dave's, which is a free online tool anybody can access at home on their computer, their precinct totals align with what you provided. Is there any way for you to check to make sure those numbers are accurate? Because that would be a great option for the public to be able to draw, and you can print a map from there, from home, and they can access it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week from wherever they're at.
I have heard of Dave's Redistricting. I can take a look at it and verify whether those, where those numbers align as far as ours, and go from there and let you guys know.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Hunley?
Sandon, Michigan law requires that persons who cannot by law register in the county to vote need to be excluded from consideration in the numbers. It's MCL 46.404, letter G as in golf. My question is, in the data provided by the Census Bureau, are these persons included in that number, to your knowledge?
That I do not know. There's no field in the legacy data at this time that shows a population of incarcerated and such. The only way I can think of to maybe take them out would be to see if there was a census block that encompasses one of those facilities entirely, and then just add or subtract it out.
I guess, Mr. Chair, as prosecutor, would you be able to, in prior reapportionment procedures, I noticed that the prosecutor would reach out to the sheriff and determine how many people were not eligible to be registered. If you're charged with a crime and being housed, you can still be counted. If you're serving a sentence, it's my understanding you cannot be counted. So I just don't want us to miss this element of the law. I'm requesting, what do we as a commission wish to do with this element of the law?
Mr. Stoker?
Again, I think the question is, clerk is accurately recording what the statute says on being counted and not counted. The viability of determining from the sheriff's department who fits that category and who doesn't, and how the actual census block has treated them. I guess that's the question. I think she's trying to put it on the prosecutor to ask the sheriff, but it's really the sheriff who's going to have to answer that, I think. But it's accurate that persons who are not eligible to vote are not supposed to be included in the numbers, and that would be a person's actually sentenced and serving a sentence. It would not include persons who didn't make bail and are just jailed at this point. So there's going to be a mix in the jail on that.
My head is spinning just trying to figure out how you would even figure that out, because
It's
you know, they're not all county residents. Ms. Greger?
A couple of things, the Central Square data that the jail uses does have their home address in it. It does have sort of a status of sorts, so we would know whether or not they were sentenced, but it is a moving number. You know, it's not going to be static and stay that way over time, so.
Ms. Dobmeyer?
Wouldn't it be the number as of April 1st, 2020, rather than a moving number?
Oh, that might be kind of fun.
Well, isn't there a daily census of the jail that they could look at, and they would know who was sentenced, who was awaiting trial? That they should have those records, I would think.
They may have the actual number in the jail, but I don't know. It might be very difficult, given their software, to figure out where they were in the process, but we can look at it and see what we can do. And, you know, if they may track that manually. I don't know. So.
Well, on the training that the other tool had from the Secretary of State, there was a reference to these people being classified as group quarters. And so I don't know if group quarters are separated out in some way in the census that might give us an idea of the names that we were looking at.
We can do some research on that. Anything else?
Can you check into that for us?
Yes.
And make it available for the next meeting?
Yes.
I'm just not, I know that at any point in time, I can look on the SharePoint and have a list of the inmates that are there and what their address is. I'm not sure that allows me, I know it doesn't allow me to go back into a point in time to see who was there on a specific date. I know at any one point in time, currently the jail has been fluctuating at a population of around 240 people, somewhere around there. So I'm not sure how significant the number is overall in any event when we get into various deviations, but if you could check on it for us. Ms. Reckling, did you have the web address for that redistricting tool?
I do. It's Dave's, Dave with an S, redistricting.org.
And Sandon is going to check into the precinct data to see how it matches up with what we have.
And you said there was an option for commissioners on there, or commissioner districts.
So I noticed it was, when I had first looked months ago, there was not, but if you create, you click on the create a new map, you have to name the map, select your state, and you select Michigan. It gives you the option for 2020 precincts, and then it says plan type. And when you click on plan type, if you click other, it will bring up a box that says restrict to, and then when you click that, it opens all of the counties and you can select Livingston. And then district count, you can pick 9 since we voted on 9 commissioners. Click apply, and that brings up just a map with Livingston County and gives you the option to draw 9 districts with all of the data.
Okay, cool, fantastic. I've got it figured out. Thanks.
Is there any other discussion of maps?
Mr. Chair, do we want to make a motion on a date within which we would like maps submitted?
I think we should do both that and a date for our next meeting. And I'm thinking that we might want to have a meeting before the date that the maps are submitted, just to have further discussion on some of the items that we've gone over today. So for instance, the information from the jail that Ms. Greger was going to get, the Sandon's checking on the Dave's redistricting tool, and any other items that might come before the commission.
Mr. Go ahead. I was just going to motion that we amend Rule 9 to strike the 14 days and replace that with no later than September 23rd, which is, if you mapped out 7 days from yesterday, the date of the email from Secretary of State, we're at September 2nd. 14 days from that is the 23rd. Since we voted on the data, that's done. And so it would give commission members and members of the public until September 23rd, almost a month, to draw and create maps and leave us 3 weeks for voting on maps.
Can I ask that we consider shortening that somewhat and allowing a day or two, depending on how many maps are submitted? I have to put them together in packages for commission members. I don't know if we're going to have 5 maps or if we're going to have 5,000 maps submitted. So I would humbly request a couple days of processing for county clerk staff to assemble the packages of maps for commission members.
So you're thinking, Ms. Hunley, about what, the 22nd with a meeting for us on the 24th?
That sounds good.
Any other commission members wish to? Don't have a motion on that yet, but I'm just informally just looking for thoughts in that regard.
Well, if Dave's redistricting tool, which I have used, but we don't know yet whether or not it's compatible with the data. And we're waiting for Sandon. So if it's not, and everybody has to use the computer in IT, we're really shutting out the public as far as offering maps,
Mr. Chair, I would prefer we not meet on the 24th. I will be out of town from the 23rd through the 26th. I know October 11th is the final date that we can do maps. And I think giving the public the option to meet. So I would propose either the 23rd for our meeting on maps to discuss it, or the 27th if possible, please. Or any day besides the 24th.
the 27th is fine with me.
Anyone else? So if I could have, I do want to set another meeting for us before then.
Mm.
But is there a motion on the 23rd for submission and the 27th for a meeting to review map submissions?
I'll move that.
Their support?
I'll second.
It's been moved and supported. Discussion?
I just want to verify that the maps are submitted no later than September 23rd.
Correct.
Okay.
And we would meet as a commission to review maps, any submitted by the public and any drawn up by commission members on the 27th. And I would think that we might want to start earlier on the 27th,
Mhm.
say like 9 o'clock in the morning. That would be a friendly amendment that the chair is making for 9 a.m. Since the time is not.
I will agree with that friendly amendment for the 27th. Do you have a time you prefer on the 23rd?
The 23rd. would-
Close of business
I would
for
say
the,
5 p.m.
close of business for the maps.
Correct. It's been moved and supported with a friendly amendment. Any discussion? All those in, well, let's do a roll call on that.
Commissioner Reckling,
Yes.
Commissioner Daubenmeier,
Yes.
Commissioner Hunley,
Yes.
Commissioner Reader,
Yes,
Commissioner Nash,
Yes.
motion carried.
Mr. Chair.
yes, Ms. Steinmeier.
I just want to clarify that we won't be actually drawing any maps. There won't be anything but maps that people bring that we will discuss. There won't be an opportunity for, Sandon to say, let's put this precinct here, and we say yes, and so forth. It's not an active drawing of maps. It's just looking at maps that people have submitted, right?
That's correct. Maps that have been submitted that we would be reviewing, both our own and those from members of the public.
Okay, thank you. So, really, we wouldn't lose anything by not being able to draw our own map, because any citizen could submit a map that we liked. So it kind of ended up being a distinction without much of a difference.
Mr. Chair, I know that in the motion with the data, we were going to post that on the apportionments website. Can we make sure that there's very clear in bold the deadline for map submission on the website for the public to know as well, along with how they have to submit their maps?
I would instruct IT to make that, have we voted on the motion yet?
Mhm. No, we'll make sure to include that.
I would propose that we have a short interim meeting just to review some of the information that's come forward today. Is there a time that, or date that works for people?
Is our meeting for next Friday still officially posted? Okay.
Mhm. Would you like that one, or do you want a different one?
We can use that September the 3rd date. By that time, we should know if the state tool is available.
Mhm.
We should have the information from the sheriff. We should have information from Sandon regarding matching precincts with Dave's redistricting org. Is there anything else from any members of the commission?
No.
If not, a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you.